Interface in object-oriented programming, I think, is the most confusing topics. It has a multiple definition. In this video, we are going to just learn about what is interface and where it's being used. And in our next video, we are going to see the full implementation in VBA. So if we look at the definition, that an interface or protocol is a data type that acts as an abstraction of a class. It describes a set of method signature, the implementation of which may be provided by multiple classes that are otherwise not necessarily related to each other. A class which provides the method list is a protocol is said to adopt the protocol or to implement the interface. I don't know if you understand this or not. Let's break it down. Okay. So an interface is just a contract. Okay, so it's a contract that all the subclasses or all these class which will implement this interface will abide those contract. Okay, so let's take a real example. So let's consider that we have employees in a company. Some of them are permanent employee, some of them are temporary employee, and some of them are just like contractual employee. Okay, now all of those employee has a common behavior that if they will get bonus or not, and another one is if they will get health insurance or not. Okay, so we can have a interface that will have those two method signature, that if someone is valid for insurance and someone is valid for bonus or not. Okay, or if we just want to check that, okay, if what should be the bonus amount. Okay, so that's the contract. Okay, in those three different classes, or in these three different type, that permanent employee, temporary employee, and the last one is that contractual employee, will implement those two function or method. That one is if they are allowed for health insurance, and what is their bonus amount. Okay, for a specific value or a specific salary, we can just pass the salary and then we can ask them, okay, what's their bonus. Okay, and for other one, that we can just check that if they are valid for health insurance or not. Okay, so those are contract that those three different classes will implement. That maybe it can have that, okay, health insurance is only valid for permanent employee, it's not for valid for temporary employee or contractual employee. So in that case, the behavior is different, right? One is returning that true and another one is returning false for that one. And the bonus percentage could be different for different type of employees. So we're just creating the interface that will have the signature that we need to implement those two method or function that will be different based on the different type of employee. So interface, in fair word, interface is just a contract that it will have a two method. One will be that give me the total bonus, that will take that salary as input, and another method that is if it's eligible for insurance or not. So those two methods that will be implemented, and if those is going to be implemented, then we can use any one of those three classes in exchange of that I interface. Okay, in exchange of the interface. So that's the formal definition. So let me just explain where it can be used. So let's consider that you have a list of string or name or something like that. Okay, now we can have an interface that I transformer. Okay, and what this interface is doing is that it's just taking this string and then it's transforming those string to another string. Now I don't know the implementation, I don't know what kind of transformation will be. It depends on the concrete implementation or implementation of that particular interface. Okay, so I can have an interface that is I transformer, and I could have three different implementation, that is uppercase. Maybe I just want to transform them to uppercase, lowercase, just Pascal case. Okay, it could have like that, or it could have like reverse case. So that's one example, that I transformer is an interface that just take a string as an input and return a string as an output of that function, and based on the implementation it will transform these to uppercase or lowercase or Pascal case. Okay, so that's one example, and we can add more transformer like a reverse case, or like we can just encode that and base 64 encoding, or we could just form URL encoding and so on. So you could have a lot of transformation that will implement this interface I transformer. That's one example. Next could be like data type validation. Okay, So let's suppose we have 4 or 5 text boxes. One is for digit, another one is for alphabet only, another one is alphanumeric keywords, and so on. Now we could have an interface that will just act on the text box, and it will just let you know that okay, if that press key is valid or not. Okay, so based on the different implementation, if it's a digit validation or if it's a alphabet validation or alphanumeric validation, it will return different, right? And it will say okay, this is valid for digit but this is not valid for alphabet, and so on. So that's the next example, and it could have a different example as well. Let's suppose we have a data in a table and then we want to save the data, but I don't know in which format. I just know that okay, I'll have this data as an input and I'll just give you the file name or file path. Okay, so full file path or maybe folder and file name. It could be the two different parameter, that folder path and file name. Okay, and then we could have that okay, I save interface or something like that. Okay, and it could be like save to JSON, save to HTML, save to CSV, or save to Markdown, or anything. Okay, or save to XML. So depending on the implementation, this I save interface, depending on the implementation of this interface, it will save in different format, right? But ideally this I save has one method that will take this data as an input, folder path as another input, and the third one is like file name, and then it can save that data into a proper format depending on the actual implementation. Okay, but I save doesn't know that what kind of implementation it will use. Okay, so that's the beauty of this I save. We could have a method that will just take those input and then save that into different format, and we could just pass that okay, save this to JSON, then we can use the JSON implementation. If we want to save that into an XML file, then we can use the XML implementation, and so on. So that's another example that using this interface. We could have the same thing in reverse way, that we could have like read data. Okay, it will just take the file full path as an input and it will return you the data as an array. Okay, now depending on the implementation, it could read from a JSON file and transform that into an array, proper array. It could read from a XML file and transform that into a proper array. Okay, from CSV or from Markdown or from HTML file, and so on. So you understand that I have the contract that it will just give me the data as an array and it will take the file path as a input, but I don't know what kind of implementation it will use, what kind of transformation it will use, but I just know that okay, I'll just pass this file path and it will return me a data as an array. Okay, so that's another example use cases of interface. Now I'm going to show you one example in real application in the next video. Thank you.